So, you sent us this piece called an ironic-sarcastic commentary.pdf.
Yeah.
And it really got me thinking about how art criticism can sometimes feel like a whole different language, like you need a special decoder ring just to understand what's going on.
Yeah, like you need a whole degree.
Exactly.
Just to understand what they're saying half the time.
Yeah.
And then you just sound pretentious when you talk about it with your friends who aren't in the art world.
Well, that's what's interesting about this piece is how it kind of sets up this playful clash between these two very different ways of looking at art.
Exactly.
So we have Carpenter Tom Jensen, who's just your average everyday guy.
Yeah.
And then we have Marianne Thygesen-Benzen, this highly academic art historian who's, diving into the theoretical side of things.
Totally different perspective.
Totally different perspectives.
Yeah.
And they're both looking at the same piece. A toilet title, get this, to shit or not to shit.
That's amazing.
I mean, you can't get more straightforward than that, right?
It really can't.
So, I mean, where do you even go from there?
That's where the fun starts.
Okay.
Because even with something as seemingly simple as a toilet, you can have these wildly different interpretations.
Right.
So Tom, our carpenter, he comes at it from a very practical perspective.
Yeah.
He's admiring the craftsmanship, thinking about how it's made, how it functions.
Right. Like, is it a one-piece toilet?
Is it a two-piece?
Kind of flush.
Is it a good flush? Is it a powerful flush?
Does it use a lot of water? Is it environmentally friendly?
Is it a noisy flush?
Right.
Like, there's a lot to consider.
There's a lot to think about when it comes to toilets. And he even starts thinking about, like, the environmental impact of, using the toilet. He mentions things like plastic and toxins.
Interesting.
Ending up in nature. Which, I mean, if you think about it, could actually, like, tie back to the whole idea of the art piece itself.
Yeah, I mean, there's that irony there, isn't there?
Yeah.
He's unintentionally touching upon some deeper themes that the art critic might even appreciate.
Right.
But he's doing it in his own language, in its own way.
In his own way, yeah. Okay, but then we have Marianne, the art critic.
Yeah.
And her review is just packed with this super academic language. I mean, she's throwing around terms like scatological palimpsest and postmodern latrine ecstasy. Wow. I mean, I don't know about you, but I had to look up half of those words.
Right, you and me both.
It was like, what is going on here?
I mean, you would think that a toilet would lead to a little bit more straightforward.
You would think.
Language,
well,
but
I guess not.
Not when you've got
not in the art world.
A super intellectual art critic analyzing it.
And it can definitely feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like she's speaking in a code.
It's like a secret society.
Yeah.
With their own
only a select few are privy to.
Secret language.
Yeah.
But if we break down what she's saying, I think essentially she's arguing that the artist is taking something ordinary, something we all use every day, and elevating it to the realm of art.
So like this isn't just any toilet. It's like a statement, a commentary, something bigger.
It's making you think. It's making you question things.
I got it.
And she connects it to other artists and movements throughout history. Like, for instance, she mentions Duchamp, who was famous for taking everyday objects, like a urinal, and presenting them as art.
Right, the fountain.
Yes, exactly. And then there's the Situationists, this group of artists and intellectuals who wanted to, like, shake up society and challenge our assumptions about everything, including art.
Including how we go to the bathroom.
Well, exactly.
Okay, so she's putting this toilet in like a much larger context, linking it to this whole history of artists who were trying to push boundaries and make people think differently.
And make people uncomfortable.
Right.
Because that's what a lot of art is about. Is making people a little bit uncomfortable.
So she's saying this toilet isn't just about, well, going to the bathroom.
No, it's about questioning. What we consider art, what we value, and how the art world itself defines those things. But for Tom, our carpenter, reading this review is like trying to understand a foreign language.
Right.
He feels completely lost and excluded by all this intellectual jargon.
Which makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does.
Is all this fancy language really necessary?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't art supposed to be something we can all connect with on some level?
Yeah.
Even if we don't have degrees in art history? That's
a good question. We're going to have to unpack that one.
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. You know, there's this perception that art has to be complicated, that you need this like special kind of knowledge to appreciate it.
Yeah, like you're not allowed to have your own opinion unless you can back it up. Or
you have to be able to like throw down some fancy theory or name drop.
Or like historical reference.
Historical figures,
And, you know.
Dates and name.
Dates and names.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
But what's interesting here is that Tom, even though he doesn't understand the critic's language, he still has a valid response to the artwork.
He does.
I mean, he's connecting it to the environment, to human behavior, even if it's not using the same terms as Marianne.
Yeah. And I think that's like really important to remember.
Right.
Art can be a springboard for all sorts of thoughts and feelings. And like, you don't need a PhD to have a meaningful experience with it.
Absolutely. And to be fair to Marianne, she is coming from a specific perspective. She spent years studying art history, theory, all these
she's got that background,
different movements and styles. So it's natural for her to see these connections that someone like Tom might not.
Like she's speaking a different dialect, dialect of the art world.
Exactly. And that's where that feeling of exclusion comes in. It's not that Tom's interpretation is wrong.
Right.
It's just that he's not fluent in the language that's being used.
But shouldn't art be more inclusive than that?
That's the question.
You know? Like if you have to jump through all these hoops just to understand what you're looking at, it kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a valid critique.
Yeah.
The art world can sometimes feel like a very exclusive club. And that could be alienating for a lot of people.
It's like, welcome to the museum. Here's a toilet.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about scatological palimpsests for the next hour.
I mean, and you know, sometimes I think that even the artists themselves get caught up in this need to be obscure to create work that's intentionally difficult to understand.
Right. Like, how shocking can I be? Right. How much can I
blow people's minds with my toilet?
With my toilet.
My crazy ideas.
Right.
But, I mean...
But isn't there a danger in that?
I think so.
In over-intellectualizing art, does it become less about the art itself?
That's a great point.
And more about the theory behind it.
And I think that's what this piece is really highlighted.
Okay,
you know? You have this art critic trying to unpack all these layers of meaning in this supposedly subversive artwork.
Right.
But in doing so, she might actually be reinforcing the very barriers that prevent people from connecting with it in the first place.
So where does that leave us? The everyday viewers, the people who maybe don't have a background in art theory. Are we just supposed to throw up our hands and say, art is too complicated, I give up?
I think the takeaway here is that you have permission to engage with art on your own terms. Whether you're picking up on subtle historical references or just appreciating the way the light hits the porcelain.
Right.
Your interpretation is valid.
Okay.
So let anyone tell you that your experience with art is somehow less sophisticated.
Right.
Because you didn't use the right terminology or connect it to some obscure theory.
So we've seen these two very different ways of looking at the same artwork.
Exactly.
A toilet, no less.
Yeah, a toilet.
And we've explored how language can be used to both like illuminate and obfuscate meaning, how the art world can sometimes feel like this exclusive club with its own secret handshake.
Its own secret language and rituals and all that.
Yeah.
And it can be a little intimidating.
Totally. But this whole discussion brings in another question, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, is there a right way to experience art?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's an easy answer.
Right.
I mean, there's definitely value in trying to understand the context of a piece.
Okay.
Like the artist's intentions, the historical influences.
Right.
Even, you know, those critical interpretations that Marianne was giving us.
Because sometimes those interpretations can give you insights that you might not have picked up on your own.
Totally. It's like having a guide in a museum.
Right.
Pointing out things you might have missed.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I didn't even notice that.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
But at the same time.
Yeah.
Your own personal reaction to the art is just as important if a piece speaks to you.
Yeah.
On an emotional level, if it sparks a thought, a memory, a feeling.
Right.
That's valuable, too.
Yeah. Who are we to say that someone's interpretation is wrong?
Right.
Just because they didn't approach it from an academic perspective.
You don't have to have a PhD in art history.
Yeah. To appreciate art.
To have a valid opinion.
Maybe they saw something in that toilet.
Right.
That Marianne, with all her fancy art terms, missed.
Totally. I mean, art is subjective, right?
Right.
What resonates with one person might not resonate with another.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes it so fascinating.
Right.
There's no one right answer.
Okay, so what's the takeaway here? What do we do the next time we're like standing in front of a piece of art and feeling a little lost or confused?
Feeling intimidated.
Yeah.
I think the key is to be open. Be open to different perspectives. Be open to learning more about the art and the artist.
Yeah.
But also Be open to your own gut reaction.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to feel something, to think something.
Yeah.
Even if you can't articulate it.
Yeah.
In Vincenzi art terms.
Because at the end of the day, art is supposed to be an experience, right?
Absolutely.
It's supposed to make us think, feel, and maybe even see the world a little differently.
A little bit differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whether you're a carpenter like Tom, an art historian like Marianne,
right,
or just someone who appreciates a good porcelain throne,
right,
there's a place for you in the world of art.
So the next time you find yourself face to face with a piece of art that leaves you scratching your head, or maybe even feeling a little bit uncomfortable, remember, there's no right or wrong way to experience it.
Trust your gut.
Trust your instincts.
Be open to new ideas.
Be open.
And most importantly, enjoy the ride.
Enjoy the ride. I love that.